When you hear the words, richest man alive, I would wager that a select group of people come to mind. The super elite, owners of multi-billion-dollar companies, superstar actors and actresses, maybe even some lottery winners. People who have more money than they or their children, or their children's children's children could ever hope to spend in all their lifetimes. Now, whether they've allowed it or not, the fact is you have heard of them. There are, however, some who theorize that there is an echelon beyond this. People who have such a level of wealth and position that they can afford to be completely unknown, invisible to the public eye and to the law. It is with great remorse and distress that I report to you, I have become such a person throughout the course of my life. I didn't start out this way, mind you. I was an average low-class man once upon a time, living off of microwave food and rusty tap water. I suppose I should start my warning with this. In the state of Arizona, there is a cave. We found it by accident, my friend and I rather, we didn't intend to find it. But I'm more and more convinced each day that it was no mistake that we did. It doesn't show up on any official maps or trail routes, and it's barely documented anywhere else. As far as I can tell, it isn't even named, at least not by modern humans. Thrill-seeking is a stupid way to die. An even more stupid way to die is by trapping yourself in a cave and starving. Unfortunately, both Christy and I had a love for thrill-seeking, specifically cave diving, and an unhealthy lack of fear of stupid deaths. The great thing about it is that even very broke people can do it. All you really need is some rope and maybe a few other tools occasionally. But that isn't the only allure, nor is it the most enticing. I don't know how to describe it. How it feels, knowing that you are going somewhere no one has ever been, not in the history of the human race. It's like being an astronaut or an old world explorer. To those who enjoy it, it brings back a sense of magic and wonder and into a world that can seem so dull. In the mountains and hills of the desert, there are many old, abandoned mines. Christy and I would sometimes go check them out over weekends if we both had the time. Most of them date back to the 19th century when Arizona experienced mining booms for silver, gold, and other minerals. They can be dangerous and unstable, but we never worried. It began when I got fired from one of my jobs. I worked overnight at a supermarket and days in a warehouse. It was grueling, but it paid the rent. I didn't want to tell Christy. We had been planning a trip to a particular mineshaft for nearly a month. Christy had been searching some obscure spelunking threads and found out about it. Supposedly, when the mine shut down, people just left their equipment, shovels, picks, rails, carts. Supposedly, it even still had its original winch and cage elevator intact. Rusted but untouched. That kind of find is rare. Most have been scrapped or collapsed decades ago. We thought it'd be nice to see it in person. We went on a Saturday early in the morning. It was hot, even for Arizona. Dry, pulsing heat that made the early morning feel like high noon. We parked half a mile from the shaft and hiked the rest with our packs and gear. We were both grinning the whole time. I remember thinking we looked like little kids on Christmas morning. I also remember trying hard not to let it show how worried I was. Rent was due soon, and without my second job, I was out of options. In truth, it was far worse than she knew, far worse than I cared to admit. Suffice to say, debt had taken all but the hair on my head. But I refused to let it spoil her day, even if mine wasn't salvageable. The shaft entrance wasn't marked, fenced, or sealed, just a yawning hole at the base of a hill, partially shaded by a ledge of crumbling rock. Someone had spray painted a warning in faded red across the stone, "Keep out." Structure unstable. We took a picture of it. Thought it looked cool. The entrance sloped inward at a gentle angle, which held for the first 100 feet or so. It was uneventful. Old wooden supports jutted from the walls like ribs, and we passed rusted rails half buried in dust. A few broken lanterns, shattered bottles, a crumpled hard hat. The thought of how strange it was hit me. These were all memories of people now long gone. But then we reached the cage. It was real, just sitting there at the end of a narrow tunnel, still attached to its rusted winch cable like it had been waiting. The metal was eaten through in places, but the shape was unmistakable, like a vertical coffin made of iron and wire. Christy was impressed to say the least. She practically bounced off the walls as we inspected it. The floor around it was covered in pebbles and half-rotted timbers. Christy ran her hand along the frame like it was a museum piece. I knelt beside the winch. The crank was rusted stiff, but intact. A length of cable still ran down into the shaft, swallowed by pitch-black void. I gave it a gentle tug, just enough to feel resistance. It almost felt like something tugged back from the other end. We debated whether to try descending in the cage. It was a stupid idea, obviously, unsafe, unsupported, and probably one breath away from collapse. But we weren't planning to ride it, just to rappel down beside it. It made a good landmark. So, we geared up. Harnesses, rope, descenders, gloves. Christy double-checked everything like she always did. I tried to pretend I wasn't trembling. From excitement, I told myself. From adrenaline, she went first. I stood at the edge and watched her disappear into the dark, her headlamp shrinking like a fading candle. Then I followed. The shaft went down farther than either of us expected. We passed layer after layer of rock, old support beams, rusted nails prodding us like thorns. A few scrawled markings lined the walls. Nothing strange, just numbers, dates, initials. Human touches, long abandoned. When my boots finally touched the bottom, Christy was already unhooking. Her headlamp swept across a wide, open chamber, maybe 20 feet high, with support beams blackened by time. A pile of old crates sat slouched against the far wall, half crushed by a ceiling collapse. The rails ended here in a broken loop, curving around what must have been a loading area. There was something about the silence down here. It didn't feel empty, it felt held, like the whole mine was holding its breath, watching us explore. I was relieved when we found the dead end. That's all it was, an elevator into a small hallway that just ended. Christy was glum, of course. And, of course, I acted glum for her sake. But it didn't last long. I saw her eyes follow her headlight as she scanned the wall. Then, she gave me a smile I recognized. It's the one she wore when she was going to convince me to do something really reckless and dumb. And that's exactly what she did. Because at the very end of that empty hallway was a hole in the wall. Small, maybe 20 inches diameter. I refused for a while, but I couldn't say no to her. I really did love her, though I never said it. What really put the nail in the coffin was that I could feel an air current. If air was coming from the hole, that meant there was a way out the other side. It came in rhythmic waves. A breeze followed by stillness, and then another breeze. This time I went first. I took off my pack, got on my hands and knees, and began to worm my way through that hole. My hands were fixed at my sides, and my legs couldn't bend. I kicked with my feet and toes to propel myself forward, twisting to the best of my ability, shoving myself through like someone squeezing toothpaste out of a near-empty tube. The cave clung to me as if trying to slow my crawl. Jagged rocks dug into my arms and shoulders like cheese being grated. The sediment tore at my feet and legs like sandpaper, even through my clothes. Pools of cold water splashed at me like saliva. I was being chewed, but what was worse was the dark. Even with my headlamp, I could see nothing but a never-ending black tunnel. I couldn't move backwards, and I was too far at this point for Christy to reach me without getting in the same predicament herself. But I could go forward. The wind kept my hope alive, it kept me moving. By the time I reached the end of that tunnel, thin streams of blood stained my arms and legs. I was caked in mud and dust, cold and still in the dark. What my light illuminated was a large, rectangular cavern. The floor was flat and bone dry. On the floor were what appeared to be tarps. Tan piles of what looked like leather or some other cloth. I could see hooks on the sides of these tarps, and strings that lay limp on the floor, running diagonally across the room towards the wall. Immediately behind the tarps was a stone. A huge, circular, perfectly flat stone. I held my hand up to it. Wind. I checked the cavern, every wall. Nothing. But when I stood before that stone, I felt wind. Christy called to me from the other side of the tunnel, and I answered her, reassuring her and trying to keep her away. If we both got stuck here, we'd be goners. I circled the stone in the center of the cave. As I did, my foot snagged on one of the wires. I stumbled, but that wasn't what knocked over. An angry yell, so loud it felt like it physically sent me falling backwards, where I landed with a thud. I scrambled to my feet in time to see the wires move. Something was pulling them back and up. One of the tarps moved along with it, stretching over the surface of the stone. It pulled until the leathery hide was taut across the front of the stone. My jaw dropped. Skin. These tarps were skin, and worse, it came with a face. The stone head had been given a fleshy face, closed eyes and an exaggerated, gaping frown. The wind became hot, but it never lost its pulse. I stood frozen as the last of the wires tightened and fell slack, the face now fully secured over the stone. The features twitched once, just a ripple across the lips, like a spasm in a dead muscle. And then, its eyes opened, cloudy eyes like a corpse, and bulging like dinner plates. Like a fish left too long in the sun. I couldn't look away. The eyes didn't move, they didn't blink, but I felt them turn toward me. Like floodlights through fog, they bore straight through the beam of my headlamp and into my skull. There was no sound, no voice, but the world tilted. I was not in the cave anymore. I stood in light, not sunlight, but something deeper. Golden, full, impossibly soft. The kind of light that seemed to shine from me. My skin was flawless. My body was lighter, taller, fitter. I felt like I'd never been tired in my life. Someone stood beside me, a woman, elegant, composed. Not Christy, not anyone I recognized, but she smiled at me like she'd known me forever. Like she owed me everything. Around us, marble floors, tall windows, the shimmer of city lights far below. Not a home, but a palace in the sky. Screens whispered my name, stocks surged, bankers listened, leaders waited, people watched, and still, I wasn't alone. There were staff, advisors, security, all waiting on me, smiling like I just told a joke they didn't understand but needed to laugh at anyway. I felt no fear, no limits. I knew I could erase debts, build nations, start wars, and stop them. I had power, and not the kind you inherit. The kind people pretend doesn't exist. The kind that lives above presidents. Above kings. It felt like peace. Like control. Like the world finally made sense, because I owned it. Everything I had ever wanted. And everything I never knew I could want. Then I fell. I fell from the heaven I had been shown and into the hell that awaited. I was cold, alone, and so hungry. A deep, gnawing hunger that hollowed you out to your spine. The wind didn't whip me, rather it pressed against me like a vice grip. I was sitting on a curb. My clothes were damp, my shoes too small. The soles had split, and my toes were wrapped in plastic bags. People passed me without looking. A couple laughed, not at me, just past me. I might as well have been part of the sidewalk. I was so much older. My hair was gone, patchy. My skin looked paper thin. My eyes, sunken, yellowed, dry. I looked like something forgotten in the corner of a freezer. And worst of all, I didn't even flinch. Because I'd seen that face before. Every night. In the windows I passed. In the puddles. In the way people avoided me. I knew that man. He was me. When I was brought back to the cave, that hideous face was the sweetest thing I'd ever seen. I understood, and I knew my choice. But nothing in this life comes free. To gain, you must lose. I've learned that lesson so many times throughout my life. The chains tensed again, pulling on one side of the face. It slid across the stone until it vanished into the darkness. The chain kept moving until another tarp rose from the floor and took the place of the first. This face did not share the exaggerated emotion of the first. It was blank. There wasn't a discernible wrinkle or curve to any feature. I called to Christy again. I told her to come through, that I had found a way out the other side. I didn't flinch when I heard the cave groan. Nor did I when I heard Christy scream and call for my help. The tunnel had merely tasted me, but its stony fangs would shred her to the marrow. I would give her to this place, to this being. Her, and whoever else it asked, as many times as it asked. As the tunnel closed around my best friend, the chains pulled a third time. And again, another fleshy tarp was stretched over the stone. A wide, toothy grin and gleeful, squinted eyes now met my gaze. The future I saw was too beautiful to pass up. And it was. Everything I was shown was given to me and more. I had everything. My only regret is that I didn't read the fine print. Now that my time is nearly up, I need to return what I've been borrowing. Renting, rather. I've started seeing it in my dreams again, that cave, those faces. I've given them dozens of lives. Sated their hunger. But I didn't realize the real cost wasn't her. Wasn't them. It was me. Every name I offered, every scream I ignored, every time I turned away. I carved off pieces of myself. My conscience, my warmth, my soul, and I tossed them into that pit. And now that nothing's left, not even guilt, it's time. They're calling me back, back to that cave, back to the stone with its stretched, pallid faces. I just pray that when I'm laid across it, I don't recognize the one who takes my place.